Who are the best investors for my startup? One of the biggest mistakes I see startup CEOs make when they attempt to raise money is reaching out to investors they have zero chance of raising money from. The result is you lose precious time and significantly reduce your chances of raising money. I've been involved in countless fundraising efforts, raising rounds of between $50,000 and $150 million. I know how to develop a targeted investing strategy that works. In today's video, I'll share my 10-step strategy to developing a focused fundraising strategy that will give you the best chance of success. I hope you like it. Hi, I'm Brett. On my channel, I help early-stage startup CEOs like you raise money and grow your startup. So if this sounds like you, then hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get notified every time I release a new video. Let's get started. And let's start with number 1 on our list. Number 1, know your limitations. I was in a discovery meeting with a potential new client, and Scott told me that he wanted to raise $100 million. I asked him why he thought that was the right number. Scott said, "That's the amount of money I need." That's great, but investors don't care. In other words, just because you want to raise $100 million doesn't mean you can raise $100 million. Most of us are not Sam Altman, so we can't raise unlimited sums of money. We have to figure out how much we can raise and what we need to achieve in order to convince investors, whomever they might be, to write a large check which is going to be significantly smaller than $100 million. This leads directly to step number 2 on our list. Step number 2, you need a plan. So, as I was saying, Scott started out believing that the right thing was to raise $100 million. I asked him to review each area of his plan. The idea was to determine what the major milestones towards success would be. We reviewed the big problem he was solving and how he planned on solving it. We reviewed the team he had in place. We reviewed the technology development plan. We reviewed Scott's go-to-market strategy and his business model. We analyzed the competition too. Finally, we reviewed the financial model as well. Now, Scott was ready to move to step 3 in the process. Step number 3, reverse the risk. You want to understand the risks in your plan and then reverse them. You're doing this not just to raise money, but to improve your chances of success. Scott had a big idea on how to disrupt a major market with a new technology. It would likely take 4 years before an initial product made it to market. Scott estimated that it would take $100 million to develop the product. It was clear this was where the risk was. However, no one was going to write Scott a $100 million check. He had to reverse the risk by breaking the technology development down into smaller chunks that cost less. For example, the first step, improving the technology, could be done for $2 million. The second step, Scott estimated, could be done for $6 million. The third step could be done for $25 million. The steps were significant, and we clearly reversed investor risk by proving the viability of the technology. These steps would take 12 to 18 months for each step. Yes, it would take longer to develop the product this way, but Scott had a much better chance of getting funded now. This leads directly to step number 4 in our process. Step 4, 100 to 1. 100 is the number of startups an angel investor or VC will typically meet with for every one startup they will invest in. The point is, you need to build a pretty large list of investors if you want to raise money. You're looking for investors that are investing in your space. You're looking for investors that invest in companies at your stage and will write checks for the amount you need. And you're looking for investors that invest where you are located. You need to find the intersection of these three things in order to build your list. Scott needed to find investors that were interested in his space, would invest in companies based in New York where he was located, and would write a $500,000 to $2 million check. The best way to find these investors is using Crunchbase.com. Now, Scott had a list of potential investors. This leads to step number 5 on our list. Step 5, reach out. Now that you have a list of potential investors, you have to figure out how to contact them. You either know someone that can introduce you to an investor, or you'll have to use a cold email to reach out. The good news is both techniques work. Scott built a spreadsheet of his potential investors, and then he used LinkedIn to figure out if he had a contact that knew a given investor. Now he had a list of warm introductions and cold emails. For a more detailed review of how to develop your list of investors, use this QR code to sign up for a free workshop on how to find investors. Next, let's move to number 6 on our list. Number 6, be prepared. You don't know when lightning will strike. That's why you need to be prepared before you reach out to investors. You need to have a lawyer. You need to have your data room ready. You need to have a detailed financial plan ready. And you need to know your numbers. Scott found a lawyer that had experience helping startups close funding rounds. Then Scott got his data room ready with the information investors needed. Finally, Scott completed his financial plan, so he had an estimate of how much money he needed and his revenue by year. He had an estimate of his costs, and he had an estimate of how much money he would need to get to cash flow positive. Now, Scott was ready to start reaching out to investors. This leads to step number 7 on our list. Step 7, batch your plan. So, you have a large list of investors to contact. There's a likelihood that your pitch will need to improve. So, reaching out to all potential investors at once isn't very smart. I recommend, as I did to Scott, that you don't reach out to all the investors on your list at once. I would break your list up into groups of 10 to 20 potential investors. Now, you're ready to reach out to these investors. And now we're ready to move on to step number 8 on our list. Step number 8, learn. So, you've sent out meeting requests to your initial list, and you have meetings set up. Now the rubber hits the road, and you'll have to start pitching investors. I told Scott that his pitch was very good, but we'll find out what's not resonating with investors. Now you, just like Scott, can learn from the meetings what needs to be adjusted and improved. You're looking for consistent feedback. In my opinion, the more detailed the feedback, the more seriously you should take the feedback. Now you're ready for step 9 on our list. Step number 9, keep making your company better. The great thing about meeting with investors is, if you take the feedback seriously, now you know what to prioritize. Your company keeps getting better, and you improve your chances of raising money at the same time. For example, in my case, we kept refining our plan and pitch to make it easier for investors to understand our differentiation. We steadily kept improving our team of founders and team that would join us after funding. Finally, we entered into partnerships with key distributors for our products. It was good for us regardless of who would invest. This will be the same for you and Scott too. Now we're ready to move to the last one on our list. Number 10 on our list. Number 10, rinse, repeat, and do it again. You don't know what's going to put you over the top. So, you want to keep going through the steps 7 through 10 again and again and again until you raise your funding. Stick with it. Just keep learning and improving your company until you get there. Now, if this content is resonating with you, then please hit the like button right now. One final thought. Raising money is not for the faint of heart. Scott asked me how many investors did I think he'll need to meet with to raise money. My answer to him is the same as I would tell you. I don't know. There are going to be lots of bumps in the road. That's why you need to stay steady at the wheel. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. That was the philosophy I used during the 2-year process when 63 investors passed on investing in our company before we raised our initial funding. I hope your fundraising journey is smoother than mine was. Now, I have 3 more things for you today. First, if you want to work with me on your startup, then just scan this QR code. Second, you can use my free startup pitch deck template. It has all the slides you need to develop an awesome pitch deck. Scan the QR code to get yours for free. Third, join my free group of startup CEOs, Zero to Pitch. It's a community for startup CEOs focused on growing their companies and raising funding for their companies. Scan the QR code to join. Finally, click the subscribe button to get notified every time I release a new video. I'm Brett at brettjfox.com. Thanks for watching today. Take care. Bye.